It's always interesting to have presentations on obesity prevention before you go and eat something. And so I'm sure you all exercise your own little point of leverage in choosing something obesity preventing for your midday meal. So we have an interesting sort of hour and 15 minutes coming up with quite a mix of both styles of presentation and level of engagement from you and different topics. And first up, because we're just mindful of time moving forwards for the rest of the afternoon, we have Anna, Wong, Shee and Alison Eldridge, who are both from Ballarat Health Services, who are going to engage with you over the next 30-40 minutes around a systems thinking approach to analysing falls data. There will be some participation from you in this session. So you could choose to move to room 2 now if you want. Although I believe next door is also going to be pretty participative. Anna is a physiotherapist and quality improvement coordinator at Ballarat Health Services, and Alison is an administration audit tool specialist officer at Ballarat Health Services. So I'd like to join me in welcoming them to this session on systems thinking approach to analysing falls data.
Hi, thanks everyone for coming. I know it's tempting to go and have a nap after lunch, so we really appreciate you coming in. So today it's actually a workshop type session because we really want this to be a discussion. We actually new at doing this. We are not experts, so I'd just like to put that out there now. So we're really interested to get feedback and hear what people have to say and help us improve on what we're doing. So we know in health services we have a mountain of data, especially around falls. We have spreadsheets, we have databases, we have mountains of numbers, and it's really hard to know what to do with all that information, and more importantly, how to generate meaningful key performance indicators. So there's a couple of ways I just want to talk about that are commonly used in health services to generate key performance indicators. So the first one, and I'm not sure you may have seen this too, is where you compare one number with another. So you might compare health service complaints this quarter to health service complaints last quarter. And as you can see, there's a 20% increase in this example. So that raises a few questions. We go, why have the number of complaints gone up this quarter? Our service must be really, turning to crap. So, and then of course the executives are going to say to us, what are you going to do about that? Because health service complaints have gone up. So has anyone ever had to meet a KPI like this where you're measuring between quarters or previous numbers? Yep, I'm sure that people have. And so it makes, I'm not sure what do people do in that situation. What do people think about this kind of comparison? You try to explain it? Yeah. Okay. And that's a very good, and I'll come to that a little bit later. So that's excellent. Anyone else?
You have to know what that represented in terms of proportion of presentations.
Exactly. So you kind of need to know the context, don't you, of the data? Because just by two numbers like this, it's really hard to know the context.
Yes, you have to challenge the assumptions. You can't say why is the number gone up? It may not have gone up.
Exactly. That's right. And so that's the same thing, the context and whether there's variation in the data too. And did you?
I was just going to say it's a flag.
It could be a flag.
Further investigation.
Could be a flag. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, you can rely on regression to the mean. So it's normally a statistical operation that's gone up. So the next time it's likely to go down.
Yep.
So you say you've done something, whatever you do, it's likely to work.
Okay. Yep. So, and that's a very good point because it will come up as that's sort of talking about variation as well. So you guys have been fantastic because these are the points that I want to bring up, and we'll talk about those a little bit more as we go along. So. The second way that we often see our performances assessed in health services is we compare to an average. And this is a little bit how you were talking there. As you can see, when you have an average, what happens, by definition, an average, you're going to have half your numbers are above the average and half your numbers are below the average because the average is around the middle. So we have a problem here because when we're comparing our performance, all these dots where we're above the average, say this is health service complaints, then we're looking really bad and we're having to explain to our executives, why this is happening. But when it's below the line, we can say, oh, we're pretty good, and we can just relax. So it's not really telling us a meaningful way. And then the other way, similarly, so we've got kind of an arbitrary target, it's average. And the other way is we just make up a target. Well, we don't make it up, but we might use a benchmark figure. Or we might have something like zero tolerance, like we might have zero tolerance for falls with serious injury. So can anyone tell me about this graph? What do you think about that, having that target there? Yep.
Well, for a start, it's got a seasonal trend in there somewhere, but it appears to anyway, because in October it's slower, around February or March it's slower.
Yeah, so the data's kind of varying, could be, yep.
You have to adjust for the season.
Yep. So these are all our, results over the months. Do we ever meet that target? No. So, we see this a lot in health service. We set a target and then we never meet it. And I'm not too sure why we have the target then, and whether that means we lose our jobs because we never meet our KPIs. So I guess what happens when we set targets like these, or we have comparisons like these, there's three ways people like to try and achieve the target or meet the goal. So sometimes they improve the system, but I guess I hate to say this, but more often than not, they distort the system. So they might put people in low bed so they can't actually even get out of bed to fall. Or they distort the data, and I see this, I hate to say this as well, commonly people, they won't report the falls because they know if their numbers are high, they're going to have to explain them and do something about it. So I guess the problems with those two common ways, and everyone's kind of, I think, familiar with those ways of generating KPIs in their health services, is the points that you guys all raised before is that, comparing 2 points, it takes the data out of context, and so it doesn't have meaning for us, and we don't really understand what that's telling us. It doesn't account for the natural variation in data that we see. So, sometimes it's going to be up and sometimes it's going to be down, or it could be seasonal. So, and also, it doesn't really tell us when to act, because we can see sometimes it looks like a flag, but we don't actually know because the next month it's come down. So we're not really sure how to act. So I'm sure that most of you know about this, but I'm going to go through it, so I apologise if it does seem a little bit simple. But what is variation? So I just want you to think about, when you've travelled to work over the last couple of weeks, you go to the same workplace, it normally takes you roughly about the same amount of time to get to work. Give or take a few minutes, not necessarily exactly the same amount of time, but within a range. But every so often, something might happen that's unusual, like you get stopped by the police for speeding. I know none of you guys have ever had that happen, but means it takes you longer to get to work, or something else happens and you get to work quicker. So we have some variation that just is happening, within you getting to work roughly around the same time, around the middle line, and then there's those exceptional variations. So those two types of variation, we have the common cause variation, which kind of forms a noise in the data. And you can't trace that back to a specific cause. It's part of the natural process. And we often call this chance variation or random variation. And then that other type of variation that we have is the special cause variation. And we look at this as a signal. So that's when there is a specific cause that is creating that variation. And potentially you can identify that cause and you can eliminate it, or you might even integrate it into your process because, it's actually making things better. So Walter Shewhart talks about data, and so he talks about the importance of recognising that data has both signal and noise. And I think the key thing when we analyse our data, the idea of it is actually to separate out the signals from the noise, because the signals tell us when to act and the noise is just something in the background that's happening regardless of what we do. So we've changed the way that we look at our falls data. Sorry. Oh, missing a slide. Sorry. Yep. Sorry, can I walk? Can you see it? No. All right, anyway, it might come up later on, but at our health service, we were doing all those things. We were comparing one number with another number, the data with the previous month or an average of the previous year. We were comparing to averages, we were comparing to arbitrary targets. And so we were making all those, I'll call them mistakes, and really I think not understanding our data. So what we've gone with is something called SPC. And I wonder if anyone in the audience might know what SPC is. Some people know because they might have read the abstract, so that's kind of cheating. But you might think about the fruit processing manufacturing industry, but it's not really that. But it is related to manufacturing. So it stands for Statistical Process Control Charts. It is a method of quality control that uses statistical methods. It was developed by Walter Shewhart for use in the manufacturing industry. And it's currently used in the UK by the NHS. So I've just got a link there for that. So this is what a statistical process control chart looks like. Oh, there's the chart. That's the one I was looking for. So these are the kind of reports that we had at Ballarat Health Service. So just taking a step back, you can see from the top one, we were comparing a month's data with the previous 12 months. We were getting some horrible figures. We were 200% off our target. So we just wanted to run and hide because we couldn't do anything about that. That was horrible. And then we had other targets where we had 3.8 falls with serious injury in a month. The problem with that, there's a couple of things. The problem with that is that we didn't meet it all that often. And when we got a 4, it was kind of close to 3.8, so that kind of made us in the orange section rather than the bad. We weren't completely bad, but we weren't completely good because 3.8 is a pretty hard number for falls. And we also had 0 targets, so that was the slide I was trying to talk to you just before. So this is the statistical process control chart. You plot your data. You plot your data in a time order, so it's a time series. Calculate your mean, and you plot that. And we have these things called process limits or control limits we'll talk about, and we plot those. And then when we analyse the data, and we're going to go into this in more detail, we look at the way the data falls around the mean and also within the process limits. So Alison's going to talk to you a little bit more about how we can make the charts, and then you'll all get to have a go at making the charts.
Thanks, Anna. So I'm going to show you how we go about. So first we usually plot our data in a graph, and Excel will do it all for us. And then we calculate our mean from our data. So our mean is, for this data set here, is 58. And in Excel we've got a formula we can do for that. So next we've got to derive our moving range. So moving range is the difference between two sets of data points. So we can go through our data and we subtract each set of data from the other. So there always needs to be the difference has to be positive. So we go along and find the difference between all our data that we have. So then from that we calculate our average moving range. So we add up the individual moving ranges and divide by the amount of values that we have. So this then gives us our average moving range. So our average moving range. So what does this now mean? So this tells us of the variation that's occurring over time within our data. So to calculate our control limits from that, we first have to derive one measure of variation referred to as 1 sigma. So the sigma is our average moving range over 1.128. So the 1.128 is a standard control limit for data in the variation of data. And it's specifically between 2 points of data, the 1.128 is a calculated control. And so our 1 sigma is 17.1. So to calculate our lower limit, we subtract 3 sigma from the mean. And to calculate our upper limit, we add 3 sigma to our mean. So we can go ahead then and plot our upper limit and our lower limit onto our data. So the construction of the charts are 5 steps. We have to plot the individual values, calculate the mean, and then we derive the moving range, then the average moving range, and then we plot our upper and lower control limits. So from then, how do we analyse that data? So there's the 9 rules called the Nelson rules that specifically at the minute, we're only using 3 of those rules to analyse the data, seeing it's sort of new to us, so we're going ahead with 3 of the rules. So the first one is if there's a point above or below our upper control limits or below our control limits, that signals there's something significant has occurred, so we need to investigate further. Rule 2 is at least 7 points consecutively either above or below the line. So that's showing us there's a shift that our overall data and figures of whatever's happening to our falls is say it's increasing, so overall. And the third rule is at least 7 points consecutively ascending or descending. So that's a signal that there's a trend that's formed and existing in our data. So we're going to show you how we put that into practice within our data and what we put together. So Anna's going to show you that.
So we just want to show you our spreadsheet that we've set up. Yep. Make that. Yeah, please. Can you drive it?
Yes.
Yep. So, so we've set up the spreadsheet using SPC charts. So what you can see is that this is our data plotted in a time series over a 12-month period for our subacute facility. The blue line is the average, is the mean. The red line is the upper control limit, and the green line is the lower control limit. So if you were can anyone see on that data, this is a quick test, from those 3 rules that Alison just talked about, one of the rules that is occurring in the data that you can see there? Oh, you guys are so, so we had 7 below the line, below the mean. So when that happens, it means there's a shift in the data. And so what we've done now is we've recalculated the mean, because obviously the average number of total, this is total falls, has decreased. So we recalculated our mean from here, and we also recalculated our control limits. So it's really interesting to see, because there's a bit of variation in our data, and then as it moves along, there was less variation, and you can see the control limits actually get smaller, so it starts to take that into account. So we might show the falls with serious injury. So just on the same chart. So this is the falls with serious injury. And in subacute facilities, falls are a big problem. We have a lot of serious injuries. We've been having a fantastic run just lately where we've had 4 months, and this is only until June. I think we actually went to 5 months of falls, no serious injuries, which is either 1 or 2 fractures. And this was, the thing about this tool when we showed this to the subacute people, it was great. They were really excited to see that they had no falls with serious injury. And then we said, well, maybe, like in a year, that's what normally happens. You get a period of time where you don't have any falls with serious injuries. So the beauty of this spreadsheet is we can change the number of months that we look at, and looking at it a 3-year period, we can see this is the first time that we had this long a period without having serious injuries, falls with serious injury. So it was a really powerful tool to show people. And then we had to, I guess, think about what things had changed that might have driven this. So we would look for a special cause variation for this. And it helps us get a baseline for when we go forward to, if we put an intervention in place, we can see if something changes, and it's not just due to variation in numbers, that it was going to go down anyway, as you said. So
I'll show that the PDF.
Oh yeah, so I'll just show you. So our spreadsheet, this thing here, it's set up so it automatically, this report goes up to our governance levels, and our KPIs, it tells us whether our KPIs are met. And so when it says a big green, we're really happy because we've met all our KPIs, which are based on those 3 rules.
Oh, that's all right. We've got to go through.
Does that? Oh yeah,
Oh,
go
yeah.
down a bit. Yeah, sorry. So this is how our report looks. So what will happen is that, for subacute, as we just saw, where we had the 7 below, it automatically flags. We did meet our KPI, but it tells us, I don't know if you can read that, that we had 7 months of consecutive falls below the average. So it's really nice. So when it comes up red, it'll tell us the opposite. It'll tell us that we had something above the upper control limit, or we had 7 ascending